A video that is not being done by request. Someone made a video a while back about about a lady who unfortunately died in a room that was a refrigerator. Anyway, one of many videos that was uploaded as evidence and is still available, I'll have links below in the description, is called Pass Elevators 2017, September 9th, and it says 001607 through, but it uses tilde instead of a dash, which is kind of weird. 2017, September 10th, and then it has 000427. These are GMT timings, UTC timings, basically, or internal timings. Encoding. It was encoded on the 8th of the month at 2300 hours, 15 minutes, 34 seconds. And the web file was created and or modified at the same moment of October 20th, both created and modified, 2017, X number of days later, at 12:31 p.m. This is the internal-external file set, and internally to all of this, it seems pretty consistent. This was done with lossy compression MPEG-4 as the main compressor. It had a variable bit rate of 0 to 13 frames per second. Since it's no higher than that, if you're going to extract or encode or re-encode it, it's safe to run it at what would be considered 15 frames a second, or a very simple multiple, but it would be best, because computers can do this, to encode it or re-encode it and translate it into, let's say, 14 frames a second max, or have it use variable frame rate like it's using, and it would be very small. The average on it is 1 frame per second, which is about right for a CCTV recording. It's a 23-hour and 48-minute recording, and the source stream size out of the 178 megabytes is only 154 megabytes. The rest of it is overhead and a bunch of data in the file. And the container format is H.263 or S.263 codec. Now, it also lists as 3GPP Media Release 5 Format Profile Codec ID 3GPP5 and 4 an ISOM subgroup. Now, what the heck are those? H.263 codec, or S, is optimized for low data transfer rates, meaning it's made to work on really shitty communications lines, below 64 kbaud, basically old school telephone frequencies with compression. It's made to do online streaming. However, if you give it plenty of room, like running it over a computer network at a hotel, it will do well. Low performance when higher bandwidths are available, but it does well enough. It's used in 3GP container format in the 3GPP specifications, and it was used on flash video sites like YouTube, Google Video, and MySpace. And until Real Video 8, it was also the original version of Real Video Codec, was based on it, and was an improvement on MPEG-2 video called H.262, sequentially, obviously. Now, what is the compression here? Now, you can do spatial compression, or whatever it's called, of pixel information on each individual frame of a video using mathematics, but you get lossy, crappy JPEG images that we make fun of on the internet that have blockiness. You can also use other compression formats where it gets fuzzy, but it's more appealing to the eye, but it's still compressed. But this is using almost exclusively one thing. I mean, it is doing image compression, but it's also doing a type of compression where it looks at the image itself and looks for changes in the image because it's a video format. If the background changes very little, it doesn't bother updating the information about the background. It only updates the information of what is changing. This is singularly useful for closed circuit TV systems and security systems because this eliminates the need to store a lot of extra data. This also makes it to where if you look up data mosh, because this is what's used for YouTube, you'll see pieces of an image moving around or pieces of an image grabbing other pieces and dragging parts of the image around. A variable frame rate, however, is a simple temporal compression method. It relies on the placement of keyframes interspersed throughout the frame sequence and can reuse a frame that has little or no change in it, or simply state, put this picture up for 10 minutes because nothing happens. And it might make a keyframe, minimum keyframe rate if it's an area of very little activity, especially if it can dynamically test whether or not it has a lot of activity during certain hours. It can change the frame rate to recording one keyframe, basically taking a single photo once a minute or once every 20 minutes. It takes up less space and you lose nothing effectively. It can be based on some minimum amount of change in the screen or on movement. Movement-based systems are commonly used for closed-circuit systems and security systems because it lets you know when someone was detected in the room. For security reasons, that's usually how they work. But they can also be based on visual detection of movement and also infrared. Okay, to review, we're going to be discussing a video called Pass Elevators, and it is a specific video. I'm not going to show any interesting frames in it. I'm going to show you what I did to try to recover it because someone tried to use the program, because it includes an executable unfortunately, to export the video and got a corrupted file. I'm going to explain probably what caused this, but maybe not. Now this is 2 screenshots. One of them there is, it's got the red box on it. It indicates the area of most movement or an area that should be considered part of what the AI routine or the compressor program thought was interesting. It can also just be the part of the screen image that's showing a lot of change. It could be caused by shadows, objects moving, whatever. And it'll either be square or it could be funny shapes. Now we're going to look at this one. This is the file. I exported it as just the letter F from this application routine. I told it file, export the file or save the file as the video so it didn't have the player anymore. Now it did make a file, a 172 megabyte file, a little bit smaller than the whole file I downloaded, which was a big executable. And it said that it was MPEG-4 and it used that file format internally. And you can look at it, it has a variable bit rate of 1, a variable bit rate average of 1.2 frames, and 13 frames a second, which is not considered a standard. It can confuse virtually every player. And more importantly, it allowed for a minimum frame rate of 0 frames per second. Now, that's kind of what you'd expect, but it also shows the stream size as being 154 megabytes. There's an extra 20 megabytes of space in there that could be chunks of busted data, overload of data, whatever. The encoding date is still reading internally to be exactly the same date for tagged date and encoded date. And it has all this other information. Now the file itself appears to be broken. However, if you, and this was a big mistake on my part, if you want to, you can go into video compressor settings for edit, save as a video, AVI, and you can pick full frames uncompressed. It will let you do that if your computer contains a few codecs. It can do that. Most computers have that ability, and it should work on many computers. And you will end up with a file that's 23 hours long and just as big as you think it would be. What you need to do is export it with the frame rate that's as close to the highest frame rate up. 15 frames a second would do well enough, but you're never going to get a real complete frame-by-frame perfect copy. But considering this contains only 100 some odd megabytes of data out of a 24-hour period of time, that may not matter. But you can, yes, if you got the space for it, you can dump it uncompressed and get every frame. It'll let you do it. I'm not even sure I can find a player that'll play a file that big. This is a big problem. But anyway, I'm going to show you what I got when I let it use the default settings by sniffing the file and exporting it that way. Because I was able to do this. I don't recommend doing it. It said it was a 300 frame per second video. Obviously that's wrong. Its max frame rate is supposed to be 30, so the file initially, or in between every frame, lists the wrong number of frames per second for the video. It's made out of lots of chunks of video and lots of individual photos that are used as keyframes in a very long file. And what that means is that setting alone could confuse most players. So that may just because my compressor freaked out, but I was able to get the video. It plays back the video. It really does. It's just freaking enormous. 1 minute and 41 seconds is 200 and some odd megs. Obviously, I should have told it explicitly, limit it to 30 frames a second or 15 frames a second would work fine and tell it to do it. The max frame rate is below 15 frames a second, so that should work just fine. Okay? Okay. And Here it is. Now remember, this is an enormous file, and you notice the jerkiness? It is actually at 15 frames a second. So all you have to do is export the video at 15 frames a second and not have it do every frame, but have it do the same compression method for it. You can tell it, if you can get the codecs on your computer, to export it in the same format, the same framing format, the same file format. It won't be identical, but you won't have to worry about whether you can get the frames. I hope this has been useful for anybody who watched. And again, the video shows up as 175 megs or whatever, and internally it has about 150 megabytes and that sort of thing. The actual stream, 154 megabytes, and it covers a 24-hour period of time. So it's going to have to use compression. The easiest one, because it's a security system, is it defaults to dropping any frames that are duplicates. And it does this looking for changes. This is the same way most security cameras work. The thing is, this one has an instant, snaps to it, start recording if there's any movement mode, and it records for a few seconds before and after through a buffer. So this is not something I would accuse of trying to hide data in, and also not something I would ever assume under any conditions would not show up as looking broken most of the time. So claiming any of this was edited is a stretch in my opinion, because it was born broken because it's a very poor file format to store 24-hour data of data. And the less traveled an area is, and the easier it is to compress, the more likely you are to get frame rate errors when you try to export or encode. Anyway, any data recovery method would involve opening up the file that's dumped in a hex editor by somebody who's familiar with this format, probably somebody who tried to steal real audio files and real video files from the old days, and go through and try to fix it that way. It might be useful to just change the extension on it to some other format and see if it can be sniffed and altered that way. It's still altering it, but you'll be able to watch it. And from what I've learned from this, because of what they used here, I highly doubt that any editing is really going on. I want to point out one more thing. Executables are, some people are claiming that executables that the police and such dumped on the net are more easily altered. That really isn't true. Executables are harder to edit because a lot of them internally will do a checksum and make sure that they haven't been. Claiming it was altered and then dumped into the executable would work, but that requires a lot of work at it. Also, I'd like to point out this archive on the website that's storing it, that you'll be able to link below, has a ton of data showing all of the videos they had. And people noticed that they didn't talk about certain videos that showed people. So if they were trying to hide something, they failed miserably. My judgment of this is not, mainstream media mode or anything. It's just that I don't really believe this qualifies as an example of any files being edited or altered, because, again, if something is born this badly encoded with this bad of a situation to try to extract from, I mean, I can do it, but it's just way too much work for the little gain it will give us. I can see this as being something that I would never ever assume is altered. I would say it's corrupted. I'd also like to point out that, yes, the raw file might contain metadata in the file itself. That may be useful. And it'll be plain text strings and also encrypted and encoded stuff. I don't know. That's for later. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.